Hey there, awesome viewers. Before we dive into this super exciting story, I need you to do me a quick favor. Drop a comment down below and tell me, where are you watching from today? Are you at home, at school, or maybe somewhere totally cool? Oh, and if you love wild stories about crazy neighbors, make sure to smash that subscribe button so you never miss out on the fun. Now, here's a question to get you thinking. Have you ever met someone who acted like they were the boss of everything, but then got a huge surprise they didn't expect? Hang tight, because this story is going to blow your mind. It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning in a place called Pinewood Estates. Picture a neighborhood with neat little houses, green lawns, and kids riding bikes down the street. It felt like the kind of place where nothing too crazy ever happened. But for one kid named Max Carter, this Saturday was about to turn into the wildest day ever. Max was 12 years old, and he wasn't like most kids his age. While his friends were glued to video games or kicking soccer balls, Max had a different kind of hobby. He loved cars, not just toy cars or cars in movies, real cars. He dreamed of building his own car someday, one that would zoom down the road faster than anything. For now, though, he had something special to work with, an old, beat-up car grill he'd found at a junkyard. Now you might be wondering, what's a car grill? It's that shiny part on the front of a car, the piece that covers the engine and makes the car look tough. Max's grill wasn't shiny at all. It was rusty, scratched, and looked like it had been through 100 adventures. But to Max, it was a treasure. He'd spent hours cleaning it, polishing it, and imagining what kind of car it could belong to someday. That Saturday morning, he was out in his driveway, sitting cross-legged on the ground with a rag in his hand, wiping down his grill like it was the coolest thing in the world. Max lived in a small house with his mom, and their driveway was right by the street where everyone could see. Kids would ride by on their bikes, waving at Max as he worked. Neighbors would walk their dogs and smile, saying, "Hey, Max, still messing with that old junk?" Max didn't mind. He'd just grin and keep polishing. To him, that grill wasn't junk, it was a piece of his big dream. But here's the thing nobody in Pinewood Estates knew about Max. He was super good at noticing stuff. Not just little things, like when someone got a new haircut, but big things. Things people tried to hide. Max had a sharp brain, like a detective in a mystery book. He could spot when something wasn't right, and he tucked that information away in his head, waiting for the right moment. And on this sunny Saturday, that sharp brain of his was about to catch something huge. Pinewood Estates wasn't just any neighborhood. It had something called an HOA, which stands for Homeowners Association. The HOA was a group of people who made rules for the neighborhood, like telling everyone what color their house could be or how tall their grass could grow. Most folks didn't mind the rules too much, but there was one person who loved the HOA way more than anyone else. Her name was Ms. Linda Harper, and everyone called her HOA Karen when she wasn't around. Ms. Linda was the president of the HOA, and boy, did she act like she owned the whole neighborhood. She was always walking around with a clipboard, writing down things she didn't like. If someone left a bike on their lawn, she'd leave a grumpy note. If someone planted flowers she thought were ugly, she'd knock on their door and complain. She even fined people money if they broke her rules. Most neighbors just rolled their eyes and tried to stay out of her way, but Max, he wasn't scared of her. He'd seen her yell at people before, and he always thought, she's up to something, I just don't know what yet. That morning, Max was humming to himself, wiping a stubborn spot of rust off his grill when he heard footsteps. Not friendly footsteps like his friend Sophie riding up on her bike. These were loud, stompy footsteps, the kind that meant someone was mad. Max looked up, and there she was, Ms. Linda Harper, marching straight toward him with her clipboard clutched tight. Max leaned back on his hands and squinted up at her. Ms. Linda was tall, with a pointy nose and hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. Her eyes were narrowed, and her lips were pressed into a thin line like she'd just bitten a lemon. She stopped right in front of Max's grill and pointed at it like it was a pile of garbage. "What is this doing here?" she said, her voice sharp and loud. "This junk is making the whole neighborhood look bad." Max tilted his head. "It's not junk," he said calmly. "It's a car grill. I'm fixing it up." Ms. Linda's face turned red. "Fixing it up? This is a nice neighborhood, young man, not a junkyard. You can't just leave trash like this out where everyone can see it." Max didn't argue. He'd learned a long time ago that arguing with Ms. Linda was like trying to argue with a brick wall. Instead, he just watched her, noticing little things, like how her hands were shaking as she waved her clipboard around, or how her eyes kept darting to the street like she was waiting for someone to show up. That's weird, Max thought. She's acting like she's nervous about something. Ms. Linda kept talking, her voice getting louder. I'm giving you one warning, Max Carter. Get rid of this thing by tomorrow or I'm calling the police. We have rules here and I won't let some kid ruin everything. Max shrugged. Okay, Ms. Harper, he said, but he wasn't really listening anymore. His brain was too busy thinking about those shaky hands and nervous eyes. He'd seen Ms. Linda boss people around plenty of times, but she'd never looked scared before. What's got her so jumpy, he wondered. As Ms. Linda stomped away, Max went back to polishing his grill, but he kept one eye on her. She didn't go far. She stood at the corner of his street, talking on her phone in a low voice like she didn't want anyone to hear. Max couldn't make out the words, but he saw her glance back at him, then look at a strange black van parked across the street. The van had dark windows, so dark you couldn't see who was inside. It had been there all morning, and Max had noticed it right away because it didn't belong to anyone in the neighborhood. Max's best friend, Sophie, rode up on her bike just then, her ponytail bouncing. She skidded to a stop and leaned over her handlebars, staring at Ms. Linda. What's her problem today? Sophie whispered. Max kept his voice low. Dunno, but she's freaking out about my grill, and she's acting super weird. Did you see that van over there? Sophie's eyes got big. Yeah, it's creepy. You think it's like spies or something. Max chuckled, but he didn't think it was spies. His detective brain was already piecing things together. Ms. Linda was mad about his grill, sure, but that wasn't the whole story. Something bigger was going on, and Max was determined to figure out what. He didn't know it yet, but that rusty old car grill was about to lead him right into the middle of a neighborhood mystery, one that would turn Pinewood Estates upside down. For now, though, Max just kept wiping down his grill, pretending everything was normal. He waved at Sophie, who was still watching Ms. Linda like a hawk. The sun was high, the birds were chirping, and the neighborhood looked peaceful. But Max knew better. Trouble was brewing, and he was ready for it. So what do you think so far? Can you guess what Ms. Linda's hiding? Stick with me because this story about to get even crazier. And hey, don't forget to tell me in the comments, have you ever had a neighbor like Ms. Linda? I bet you've got some stories of your own. Max was sitting in his driveway, rubbing a soft cloth over his rusty car grill. To him, it wasn't just a piece of old metal. It was like a shiny trophy, full of possibilities. The sun was warm and the neighborhood was quiet except for the hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the street. Max smiled to himself, thinking about the car he'd build one day. That's when he heard it, angry footsteps stomping closer. He looked up and there she was, Ms. Linda Harper, the lady who ran the neighborhood's homeowners association, or HOA. Everyone secretly called her HOA Karen because she was always bossing people around. She had a clipboard in one hand and her face looked all scrunched up like she just smelled something bad. She marched right up to Max, her shoes clicking on the pavement, and pointed at his car grill like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. Boy, she shouted, her voice sharp. What is that junk doing in my neighborhood? That ugly thing is ruining everything. Get rid of it right now or I'm calling the police. Max leaned back and squinted at her. He wasn't scared. Ms. Linda yelled a lot and he was used to it. Everyone in Pinewood Estates knew how she was. She'd get mad if someone left a bike on their lawn or planted flowers she didn't like. One time she fined Max's neighbor, Mr. Thompson, just for having a basketball hoop in his driveway. Most people tried to ignore her, but Max could tell something was different today. Her voice sounded weird, like she was trying to sound tough but was actually nervous. Max noticed her hands were shaking a little, even though she was gripping her clipboard super tight. Her eyes kept looking at the street, then back at Max, then at the street again. What's she so jumpy about? Max wondered. He didn't say anything out loud, though. He just shrugged and said, It's not junk, Ms. Harper. It's a car grill. I'm fixing it. Ms. Linda's face turned pink like she was about to explode. Fixing it, she snapped. This isn't a junkyard, young man. We have rules here. That thing is an eyesore and I won't stand for it. She waved her clipboard in the air and a few papers almost fell off. Max stayed calm, but he kept watching her. Something wasn't right. See, Max wasn't just a kid who liked cars. He was super good at noticing stuff other people missed, like how Ms. Linda's voice got higher when she said police, or how she kept glancing at a strange black van parked across the street. The van had been there all morning, and Max had seen it right away because it didn't look like it belonged. Its windows were so dark you couldn't see inside, and nobody had gotten out of it. Max's brain was already starting to think like a detective. Ms. Linda didn't leave after her big speech. She stood there, staring at Max like she expected him to jump up and throw his grill in the trash, but Max just went back to polishing, wiping a smudge off the metal. He wasn't going to let her ruin his day. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. Why was she so mad about a piece of metal? She'd seen it in his driveway before and never cared this much. A few minutes passed and Ms. Linda finally walked away, muttering to herself. Max watched her go. She didn't head home, though. Instead, she stopped at the corner of the street and pulled out her phone. She started talking to someone, but she kept her voice low like she didn't want anyone to hear. Max couldn't catch the words, but he saw her look back at him, then at that creepy van again. His stomach did a little flip. What's going on, he thought. Just then, Max's best friend, Sophie, rode up on her bike. Her tires squeaked as she stopped next to him. "Hey, Max," she said, grinning. Then she saw Ms. Linda at the corner and lowered her voice. "Oh, what's she doing here? Did you get in trouble again?" Max shook his head, still watching Ms. Linda. "She's mad about my grill," he whispered. "Says it's junk and she's gonna call the cops, but look at her, Sophie. She's acting all weird." Sophie tilted her head, her ponytail swinging. "Weird how?" Max pointed with his chin. "See how she's talking on her phone? She's all sneaky about it, and her hands were shaking before. Plus, that van over there, it's been sitting there forever." Sophie's eyes got big as she looked at the van. "Whoa, that thing's creepy. You think it's got something to do with her?" "Dunno," Max said, "but I'm gonna find out." Ms. Linda finished her call and stuffed her phone in her pocket. She marched back toward Max's driveway, her face even grumpier than before. Max and Sophie pretended to be busy, Max polishing his grill, Sophie kicking at a pebble with her sneaker. Ms. Linda stopped a few feet away and crossed her arms. "I'm serious, Max Carter," she said, her voice loud enough for the whole street to hear. "That junk better be gone by tomorrow or you'll be sorry. I'm not playing games." Max looked up at her, his face calm. "Okay, Ms. Harper," he said, but inside his brain was racing. He noticed something new, a tiny bead of sweat on her forehead, even though it wasn't that hot outside. She's scared of something, he thought, but what? Ms. Linda glared at him for a long moment, then turned and stomped off toward her house. Max and Sophie watched her go, waiting until she was out of earshot. Then Sophie leaned in close. "Okay, that was super strange," she said. "She's never been that mad about something so little. What's her deal?" Max didn't answer right away. He looked at his grill, then at the van, then at the spot where Ms. Linda had been standing. His detective brain was putting pieces together, even if he didn't have the whole puzzle yet. "I think she's hiding something," he said finally, "and I think it's bigger than my grill." Sophie grinned like a mystery. "Oh man, we're gonna solve it, right?" Max nodded, a small smile creeping onto his face. "Yeah, but we gotta be careful. Whatever going on, she doesn't want anyone to know." The two friends sat there for a minute, the air around them feeling a little heavier. The neighborhood still looked normal, kids playing, birds chirping, but Max knew better. Something was brewing and Ms. Linda was right in the middle of it. His car grill wasn't just a project anymore. It was like a magnet, pulling all the secrets out into the open. The sun was climbing higher in the sky, and Max was still out in his driveway, rubbing his rusty car grill with a soft cloth. He liked the way it sparkled a little when he cleaned it just right. But every few minutes his eyes flicked up to watch Ms. Linda Harper. the HOA lady everyone called HOA Karen behind her back. She wasn't done with him yet. For the past hour, Ms. Linda kept walking back to Max's driveway like a moth buzzing around a light. Each time she'd stand there with her clipboard, muttering about neighborhood standards and stupid rules being broken. Her voice was loud, but Max didn't let it bother him. He stayed calm, wiping his grill slowly, pretending he didn't even notice her. But deep down, his brain was working like a detective, picking up clues nobody else saw. Max noticed how Ms. Linda's phone kept buzzing in her pocket. Every time it did, she'd pull it out, look at the screen, and frown. Then she'd step away, whispering into the phone like she didn't want anyone to hear. Her whispers sounded angry, and once Max caught her saying, "Not now," before she hung up fast. Who's she talking to? Max wondered. It wasn't normal for her to act so sneaky. Then there was that creepy black van parked across the street. Max had seen it when he first came outside that morning, and it hadn't moved an inch. Its windows were super dark, like black mirrors, so you couldn't see who was inside. Most cars in Pinewood Estates belonged to neighbors, and Max knew them all: the red truck, the blue minivan, the shiny silver car. But this van, it didn't belong. And Ms. Linda kept glancing at it, like she was nervous it was there. Max's best friend, Sophie, showed up just then, her bike tires crunching on the gravel as she skidded to a stop. Her eyes were bright with excitement, like she could tell something big was happening. "Hey, Max," she said, keeping her voice low. She nodded toward Ms. Linda, who was packing near the corner, yelling into her phone again. "What's her deal today? She looks madder than usual." Max leaned closer to Sophie, his cloth still moving over the grill. "I don't know," he whispered, "but she's acting super weird. She's been coming back here like a million times complaining about my grill. And check this out, her phone keeps buzzing and she's all sneaky when she answers it." Sophie's mouth dropped open. "Sneaky how?" "Like she's hiding something," Max said. "And that van over there," he pointed with his thumb, careful not to look too obvious. "It's been sitting there all morning, nobody gotten out, and Ms. Linda keeps staring at it." Sophie turned her head slowly, her eyes locking onto the van. "Whoa," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "That thing's creepy. You think it's cops, or maybe like bad guys or something?" Max didn't answer right away. He'd watched a ton of detective shows on TV, the kind where kids solve mysteries and catch grown-ups doing sneaky stuff. His brain was racing, trying to figure out what all these clues meant. The buzzing phone, the van, Ms. Linda's nervous eyes, it was like a puzzle, and Max was determined to solve it. "I don't know what it is," he said finally, "but something's up." Sophie grinned, her eyes sparkling. "This is like a real-life mystery. We're gonna figure it out, right?" Max nodded, but he kept his face serious. "Yeah, but we gotta be careful. If she's hiding something, she won't like us snooping." Just then, Ms. Linda hung up her phone and stuffed it in her pocket. She marched back toward Max's driveway, her face red and her clipboard flapping in her hand. Max and Sophie went quiet, pretending to be busy. Max scrubbed his grill a little harder, and Sophie kicked at a pebble with her sneaker. "Max Carter," Ms. Linda barked, stopping a few feet away. "I'm not joking. That junk in your driveway is against every rule we have. You're making this neighborhood look like a dump." Max looked up, his face calm as ever. "It's not junk, Ms. Harper," he said. "It's my project. I'm not hurting anybody." Ms. Linda's eyes got so narrow they almost disappeared. "Not hurting anybody," she snapped. "You're ruining everything. I've had enough of this." She pulled her phone out again, her fingers shaking as she punched in a number. Then she held the phone to her ear and started talking loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Hello, police. This is Linda Harper from Pinewood Estates. There's a kid here breaking all our rules with some junk in his driveway. I need you to come right now." Max didn't flinch. He just kept wiping his grill, slow and steady. But inside, his heart was thumping. Not because he was scared of the police. He knew he wasn't doing anything wrong. No, his heart was thumping because he saw something else. When Ms. Linda said police, her voice cracked like she was nervous about them coming. And right after she hung up, she glanced at that black van again, her face pale. Sophie nudged Max with her elbow. "Did you see that?" she whispered. she's freaking out. Max nodded, his eyes still on Ms. Linda. Yeah, he said quietly. She's not just mad about my grill, there's something else going on. Ms. Linda didn't stick around after her call. She turned and stomped off toward her house, her clipboard tucked under her arm. But Max noticed she kept looking over her shoulder like she thought someone was watching her. The street was quiet now, except for a dog barking a few houses down. Max and Sophie sat there, the air feeling a little heavier, like a storm was coming. Sophie leaned her bike against the driveway. Okay, Max, she said, her voice serious. What do we do now? If the police are coming, are you gonna get in trouble? Max shook his head. Nah, they're not gonna care about my grill, but I bet Ms. Linda's gonna wish she didn't call them. He smiled a tiny bit, like he knew something she didn't. Sophie's eyes got wide. What do you mean, you know something, don't you? Max didn't answer right away. He looked at his grill, then at the van, then at the spot where Ms. Linda had been standing. His brain was putting pieces together, even if he wasn't sure what the whole picture looked like yet. Let's just say, he said, she's got no idea what's coming. Sophie giggled, bouncing on her toes. This is so cool, it's like we're in a movie. What's next? Max stood up, brushing dirt off his jeans. We wait, he said, and we watch. Whatever she's hiding, it's gonna come out soon. The two friends stood in the driveway, the sun shining down like nothing was wrong. But Max knew better. Ms. Linda's angry words, her shaky hands, that mysterious van, they were all part of something bigger. And Max was ready to find out what. The sun was high in the sky, and Max was still in his driveway, leaning against his rusty car grill. His hands were a little dirty from polishing it all morning, but he didn't care. He was watching Ms. Linda Harper, the HOA lady everyone called HOA Karen. She was standing right there, arms crossed, with a big, smug smile on her face. She thought she'd won. About 10 minutes ago, Ms. Linda had called the police, saying Max's grill was junk and breaking all the neighborhood rules. Now a police car rolled into Pinewood Estates, its red and blue lights flashing. The whole street seemed to hold its breath. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, and a few kids on bikes stopped to stare. Ms. Linda looked like she was about to burst with pride. See, young man, she said, her voice loud and sharp. You can't just do whatever you want around here. The police are going to make you get rid of that ugly trash. Max didn't say a word. He just leaned against his grill, his arms relaxed. He wasn't scared at all. His eyes followed the police car as it parked right in front of his house. Two officers stepped out, their badges shiny in the sunlight. Ms. Linda's smile got even bigger, like she thought Max was about to get in big trouble. But Max knew something she didn't. He stayed calm, watching everything unfold. His best friend, Sophie, was next to him, her bike propped up in the driveway. She looked nervous, her eyes darting between Max and the police. Max, she whispered, are you okay? What's gonna happen? Max just gave her a tiny nod, like he was saying, wait and see. Then something unexpected happened. Another car pulled up right behind the police car. It wasn't a police car at all. It was a fancy, sleek sedan, black and shiny, with no lights or sirens. The doors opened and two men stepped out. They weren't wearing police uniforms, they were in suits, like the kind you see in movies about secret agents. Their badges glinted in the sun as they walked straight toward Max's driveway. Ms. Linda's smile started to fade. Her arms dropped to her sides and her face went pale, like she'd seen a ghost. Max noticed it right away. She's scared, he thought. One of the men in suits looked right past Max and called out, Ms. Linda Harper. His voice was calm but serious. We need to talk to you right now. Ms. Linda's mouth opened, but no words came out at first. She looked like she was trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she stammered, what? This isn't about me, it's about him. She pointed at Max, her finger shaking. He's the one breaking the rules with that trash in his driveway. The police officer standing by the patrol car let out a little chuckle. He shook his head like Ms. Linda had just said something funny. "Ma'am," he said, "we're not here for the kid. We've been watching you for weeks." Ms. Linda's clipboard slipped from her hand and hit the ground with a loud thwap. Sophie gasped, her eyes so wide they looked like they might pop out. The neighbors who'd been watching from their windows started whispering to each other. Max, he just stood there, leaning against his grill, a tiny grin creeping onto his face. The officer turned to Max, his face friendly. "Nice work, kid," he said. "That tip you sent us about her side business, it checked out." The whole neighborhood went super quiet, like someone had turned off all the sound. Sophie's jaw dropped so low it almost touched the ground. Ms. Linda looked like she wanted to disappear. Her face was red now and her hands were shaking worse than ever. "Tip," she squeaked. "What tip? I didn't do anything." But Max knew the truth, and now everyone else was about to find out. See, Max wasn't just a kid who liked fixing car grills. He was the kind of kid who paid attention to everything. A few weeks ago, he'd been riding his bike near Ms. Linda's house when he heard her talking on the phone. She didn't know he was there, hiding behind a bush, listening. She was bragging to someone about how she was making extra money, lots of it, not by working a regular job, but by doing something sneaky. Ms. Linda had been making up fake HOA fines. She'd tell people they broke rules, like leaving a trash can out too long or painting their mailbox the wrong color. Then she'd make them pay money to the HOA to fix it. But here's the thing, the money didn't go to the HOA, it went straight into her pocket. She was stealing from her own neighbors. Max couldn't believe it when he heard her. He didn't tell anyone at first, not even Sophie. Instead, he did something super smart. He went home, got on his mom's computer, and sent an email to the police. He didn't use his real name, he pretended to be a concerned neighbor. In the email, he told them everything he'd heard about Ms. Linda's fake fines. He even told them to watch her house, because he had a feeling she was up to more sneaky stuff. And that black van across the street, the one Max had been watching all morning, it wasn't just some random car. It was the police keeping an eye on Ms. Linda. They'd been waiting for the right moment to catch her, and Max's email had helped them figure out exactly what she was doing. Now, standing in the driveway, Max felt a little proud. He hadn't yelled or fought with Ms. Linda. He just used his brain, and it worked. The man in the suit stepped closer to Ms. Linda. "Ms. Harper," he said, "we have proof you've been forging HOA documents and keeping the money. You're in big trouble." Ms. Linda shook her head, her voice high and squeaky. "No, that's not true. I'm just trying to keep this neighborhood nice. It's his fault." She pointed at Max again, but nobody was listening to her anymore. Sophie grabbed Max's arm, whispering, "Max, did you do this? Did you tell the police?" Max nodded, his grin getting bigger. "Yup," he said quietly. "I heard her talking about it a while ago, figured someone needed to stop her." Sophie bounced on her toes, her face lit up like it was Christmas morning. "You're like a superhero, a detective."